1. Some years ago, the organization I work for brought in a consultant to make us more efficient and reduce waste. She was working across a number of teams, including the team I worked for. For our team, most of our work is office-based, about 75%, but we often work in retail environments and occasionally in industrial settings. The other teams that the consultant was working alongside all seem to be totally office-based. Some of the sites we work at can be quite dirty, or smelly butchers are among the worst. And so we always advise people what to wear, as it's easier and cheaper to clean a pair of jeans rather than a suit. I was introduced to the consultant and was told she'd be accompanying me on a job. She seemed quite pleasant and was very smartly dressed. I talked her through the booking process and explained the work we would be doing. I suggested that she may want to wear casual clothing rather than business attire. She got extremely angry and said, "Don't you ever tell me what to wear," and told me that it was inappropriate to tell a woman what to wear. She was unwilling to listen to my justification. A few hours later, I was pulled into a meeting with my supervisor and our manager. The consultant had made a complaint to the higher-ups in our organization. Whilst my supervisor was supportive, as he normally was, our manager didn't want to rock the boat with senior staff, and so agreed to tell me my behavior was wrong. Thankfully, it was agreed that no formal action would be taken, and there would be no record on my file. My manager agreed with the consultant that I shouldn't provide fashion advice, and wasn't willing to listen to reason. Thankfully, it was agreed that she wouldn't come along on the job. About a month later, again, I was told that the consultant would accompany me on a job, this time to an industrial site where I would be testing a piece of equipment. The site would draw steel from large coils and turn it into bar. Whilst not the dirtiest place we go to, it's a long way from being clean. I felt this was the perfect opportunity for some malicious compliance. I emailed the manager and asked if I could advise on appropriate clothing, and he emailed back saying that both the consultant and he had made it clear I was not to bring it up, and to do so could lead to disciplinary action. The job I would be doing normally required a second person to record results while I was doing the testing. It was agreed that the consultant would be hands-on and record the results. An important point to note is that all industrial sites we visit will have a PPE requirement, with the minimum being protective footwear. Obviously, having been warned, I didn't mention this. The site was about an hour from our office, and I phoned as I was leaving to let them know we were on our way, thankfully in separate cars. They normally asked for a call so they could stop production just before we arrived to avoid downtime. As we arrived, we were met by the health and safety coordinator for the site, who did his intro. I produced my safety passport card, which showed I was competent in health and safety matters. I introduced the consultant and explained she would be assisting me, looking at ways my work could be delivered more efficiently. I took my overalls out of my bag and slipped them on over my clothes, and swapped my shoes for steel-capped boots. The health and safety coordinator asked if the consultant wanted privacy to get changed, and she explained she wouldn't be. He gave me a bit of a look, knowing that she didn't have a clue what was going on. He then asked where her safety shoes were, and she explained she didn't have any. He refused to let her down in the factory floor, and she had to spend the job in the reception. Once away from the consultant, I explained that if I had to log the results myself, it would slow the process down. He offered me one of his staff to do it. I then told him the story of what had previously happened. He thought it was hilarious what I'd done and wanted to play along. He asked for the details of a senior manager, and while I was testing the equipment, phoned to complain. He said it was unfair that he was supplying staff to assist me when he was paying for the job to be done. When I finished the job, the consultant had already left. When I got back to the office, I was pulled into a meeting with our director, my manager, and lots of other higher-ups, and was asked to explain myself. The director let me fully explain, and thought it was ridiculous I was blamed for the first incident. I also explained that I had email confirmation I wasn't to speak to her regarding clothing. He said he was disappointed that I hadn't at least emailed regarding the need for safety shoes, or raised it with the manager as a safety concern, but he understood why I'd made a point. I was excused from the meeting, and my manager came out a short while later looking sheepish, and never mentioned the topic ever again. We gave the company a discount on the work for supplying an assistant, so they were happy. My supervisor later explained that the consultant had upset a number of people, and so her contract was cut short. 2. A little bit of introduction. I am and have always been a very fluent reader. Reading comes naturally to me, and I read literally everything from short stories to novels, from children's books to biographies, and, this is important, manuals and instructions, including, when I have too much time in my hands, laws, rules, regulations, and legislations. I'm the guy who reads the fine print. I'm the guy who reads the disclaimer. Many a times this has come in handy. For example, when friends or family have some problem with their household equipment, computers, etc., they call me. Then, when I have solved their problem with usually a simple fix, they ask me how I did it, and it always surprises them when I tell them I just read the manual. When this happened, I was living in a small town and working in another town. Between those towns is about a 40-minute drive, if you stick to the speed limit. Me, having driven this road back and forth every day for 3 years, I usually made the trip in 30 minutes. Once in 20 minutes, but that's not a story I'm willing to share just yet. It had been a normal day at work, and I was on my way home, cruising slightly above the speed limit. Soon after I exit the town where I work, I notice a car behind me that is set to my cruise. Overtaking the same cars as I do, following me but keeping a safe distance. I don't think much of it, as it's not unusual. When I have just about 5 minutes left on my trip home, wouldn't you know it, I see blue lights flashing in my rearview mirror. That car following me for 25 minutes was an unmarked police vehicle. I pull over and watch the police car in my rearview mirrors. To my surprise, an officer steps out of the car from the back seat, walks over to me, and asks me if I'm willing to come over to their car and have a little talk. I approved and walked with him to the car and sit in the middle of the back seat, and the officer that came to me sat beside me. To explain the situation a bit, there were 4 officers in that car, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and I was now crammed in between the 2 in the back. It so happens that the other officer in the back is a good friend of mine, so I have some info on what happened after I left the police car. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The officer at the wheel was, I later found out, the senior officer, and the one taking point on all of this. The other 3 just laid back and listened in. He starts by asking me if I knew why they pulled me over. I decided to answer vaguely and said that I had some idea. He goes on to tell me that they have been following me from my town of work to the point of where they stopped me, and that not once did I drive at or below the speed limit. I asked how he measured the speed of my car. Not all unmarked police vehicles in my country have a speed radar, and this one didn't. He tells me that they used a speedometer in their car as well as his smartwatch, which had a GPS in it. I had from the beginning of this encounter been very calm, and that plus my question as to how he measured my speed seemed to annoy the senior officer somehow. He then goes on to angrily tell me that I will be written up and fined a hefty amount of money. Then, just as he's about to start writing me up, I ask him for his name and badge number. He begrudgingly gives both to me and I write them down. He then asks me what I'm going to do with it, and goes on to tell me that I cannot file a complaint against him as he has not done anything but talk to me in a professional manner, and that the other 3 can bear witness of that. Following is my answer, or roughly, I don't remember the exact words I used. "Oh, no, I have no intention of filing a complaint against you. Let me just go over things a bit. You told me that you followed me from town to town driving at over the speed limit this whole time, right? Speed measured on your car's speedometer and your GPS watch, right? None of which are legally certified devices to measure the speed of other vehicles, let alone in the purpose of law enforcement. The whole time you drove over the speed limit, you did not have your blue flashing lights on. The laws in our country state that when a police vehicle does not have those lights turned on, the vehicle is considered just as any other vehicle on the road. Therefore, you have informed me, in front of witnesses, that you drove above the speed limit for an extended period of time. You just admitted to us that you broke the law. What I intend to do, if you write me up for this, is to go to your superior officer with this information. I will not object to you writing me up. You do your job the way you see fit. I do, however, find it questionable, to say the least, that you have not used any legally certified method to measure my speed. But as I said, you do what you believe your job is, and I will do the right thing as a citizen of this country, having information about laws being broken." The look on his face was priceless. His jaw lowered slightly as he looked at me dumbfounded while he processed what I had just said to him. Then his face suddenly turned some shade of maroon, and he grumbled that I was free to go, which I happily obliged. I later found out from my friend that he spent the rest of their way to the station cursing me to hell and back, furious that this little stupid piece of shit had actually read the traffic law. I never saw a ticket for this violation. 3. I have always liked having a splash of color in my hair, and it had never been an issue with employment until this instance. At the time, I had my natural brunette hair short and spiked up, with a blue patch at the front, which happened to be the same shade as our employees' shirts, which pleased me. One day, a few weeks into the job, the regional manager walked in, a woman with a chip on her shoulder the size of her ego. She did her checks on how the store was running, etc., and was talking to me as I was the newest employee there, making sure I knew what I was doing and stuff. As she finishes up, she says offhanded to me, "By the way, you'll have to take that color out of your hair. I want it gone by my next visit." This surprised me, as I'd read the employee handbook to make sure I was following all uniform guidelines, and made sure it wasn't an issue with the two shop managers. So I asked her why I had to change my hair. She instantly got huffy and puffed out her chest and said, "Because I told you to. Are you questioning me?" No, I was just wondering what guidelines I've broken, as I've read the employee and uniform regulations and didn't see anything about hair color in there, and I want to be sure I haven't missed something. "Because I told you so, and it's an unnatural hair color. You'll have to get rid of it." This annoyed me, as I've never liked having to do something just because, so I told her, "Well, other guy at the register has bleached tips. Manager 1 dyes her hair blonde, and Manager 2 has maroon hair. None of those are natural colors, so I don't understand why I'm getting singled out." Regional manager did not like this, and since she couldn't give me an answer, just repeated, "Because I'm your boss and I told you so, and if you don't want to change your hair, you can leave. I will be in next week, and I want that color gone." So I said, "I understand, I'll fix it, no worries. But just to be clear, so I'm in keeping with your guidelines. Other guy, Manager 1 and Manager 2 have acceptable colors and styles." To which she said yes, and I said, "And is my hairstyle okay? Did you want me to cut it a certain way or anything? Or is it just the color?" She started getting annoyed again and said, "You can keep it like that, just get rid of that color." So I confirmed that I would have it sorted before she came in next week, which seemed to satisfy the beast, and she walked off in a cloud of smugness at having laid down her law. As soon as she was out the door, I told the shop managers what I was going to do, and they laughed out loud and said they'd have my back when she came in again. So my blue patch of hair had to go, no problem. Colored tips, dyed blonde hair, and maroon hair like the other staff had were all hunky-dory. So that weekend, I did all three to be on the safe side. I bleached all my hair near transparent blonde, with maroon tips, spiked up my usual style, as apparently that wasn't an issue. Well, turns out that's not what the regional manager had in mind. Quelle surprise. She came in the next week and lost it. Took me in back with two of the shop managers, shouting about how I was blatantly ignoring her, and that she was going to see to it that I was fired. I acted innocent and surprised, and said that I checked with her that this would be okay before she left. My hairstyle was fine, colored tips on the other guy was fine, and she had confirmed that the maroon hair the shop manager had was fine. She was not backing down and assured me she'd report me to the head office for disrespecting a regional manager like that. She stormed out of the shop on her merry way, so again I told the two shop managers what I was going to do, which is get in touch with the head office's HR department myself, as I was following all written company regulations, as well as the regional manager's arbitrary rules. And she seemed to be discriminating against me personally for whatever reason, and I would be pursuing unfair dismissal as there was no reason to fire me. I was damn good at my job and got on well with all the customers and staff. It was only the regional manager out to get me. So I did just that. Emailed the head office's HR saying what happened, and the two shop managers also emailed on my behalf, backing up that I was following all guidelines, including the ones the regional manager made up, and that I was a model employee, for them anyways, but I liked them. And they would attest that I was being singled out and harassed by the regional manager if I got dismissed because of this. The next day, the shop managers called me in to say HR had been in touch, and that of course I wasn't going to be fired, and there is no company guidelines for things like hair color, and not to worry at all about it. Have my hair any way I wanted, as long as it wasn't unkempt. Awesome, that's all I wanted. Happy ending. Now let's do the super duper happy ending. Diddle-doo, diddle-doo, diddle-doo. Couple weeks later, the new regional manager walked in to introduce themselves. Turns out I wasn't the only one having issues with the regional manager being on a power trip. After they had several complaints from staff and managers in different stores throughout the area, she was demoted to a regular store manager. I was the straw that broke their back, it seems. 4. I'm a bank teller, full-time Monday to Friday. Background info on tellers, and really all bank employees, is that we get paid fairly well and get great benefits to encourage us not to steal. This is important to note because it's a facet of the malicious compliance of the story. Now we have a client who we'll call Jay. Jay is a problematic client, as they have accused us of stealing from them multiple times. They've even accused us of stealing when they were holding the cash they had just withdrawn in their hand. Suffice to say, none of us like Jay, and we take extra steps to make sure that Jay's transactions have all been properly documented to the umpteenth degree. We have them fill out a withdrawal slip, even if they have their card. We write their name on our cash counter tickets whenever we run their transaction, and we staple a white copy of the ticket to the withdrawal slips. Now, as said, Jay's been accusing us all of stealing from them, despite them regularly having their debit card lost and or stolen from them around town. They have even accused our branch manager of stealing from them. Our branch manager only touches cash when closing or opening an account. Otherwise, they stay in their office and make calls. And they have also none of the systems in their office that would make stealing possible. Not that they would, because once again, the pay is good. With that backstory out of the way, onto the MC. We were having a slow morning, so there's time to answer the phones. Even with lobbies closed and being drive-through only, we get slammed regularly where we don't have time to answer. I pick up when it rings, and it's none other than Jay. What follows is a paraphrased conversation. Thank you for calling Scrooge & Marley Bank on Baker Street. This is the Hallow One. How can I help you today? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, it's Jay. Can you hear me now?
Oh, hey, Jay. Yeah, I can hear you now. How can I help you?
I'm missing money from my account. I had over $100 in there on Friday, and now I have less than $50.
No, I'll look into that for you. 1 sec.
Could you, please? Thank you.
I brush off the anger. I understand client frustrations, and I'm having a pretty okay day all around. Check their account, and they're the only one who has done anything with their account. Alright, so I see here where you had those funds on Friday, then you made a withdrawal.
Yeah. That was the last withdrawal I made.
No, Jay, you made a withdrawal Monday and yesterday as well.
I've told you all 100 times I don't want anything coming out of that account. I have my cars shipped to you because they get stolen all the time. I don't want anything coming out of that account that I'm not authorizing.
And you authorized these 2 withdrawals. I have your
I need that money to live off of, nothing else. I don't buy anything else. I use that money to live. I told the branch manager to take $300 from my check each month and put it into savings, and I don't see that.
As they're ranting, I'm checking their accounts and seeing they have no savings account. My tele-coordinator slips me a piece of paper. If Jay thinks they're being stolen from, get them over to fraud. After Jay takes a break in the ranting, Jay, do you think you're being stolen from?
Of course I am. I'm losing money. I'm trying to keep my account stable, and it keeps going up and down.
Well, do you want me to get you over to fraud?
What can you do? Do you even know how to add and subtract?
Yes, I do. And all your transactions add up to what you had Friday and what you have now.
Well, what you can do is transfer me to branch manager. Are they available?
No, Jay. They're with a client right now.
Well, have them call me back. You have my number in your computer.
I feel sad for my manager and go to check the number. Is it? And I say their phone number.
Let me check. I don't know. I don't call myself. Can you call me? See if that's the number. See if my phone's working.
I can do that for you. I'll have to hang up first, though. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
I hang up. Now, our systems are usually up to date because we do service a number of other clients who don't really move at all. But there's times where the account is so old, and they haven't checked with a banker in a while, that the information is wrong. Jay also left no callback number in case this was wrong, so I call. And it rings. And rings. And rings. The number you are trying to reach is no longer in service. Guess that wasn't the right number. Oops. 5. Some background. In high school, I went to an academic magnet school. Essentially, it was a public school ran like a private school. You had to have certain test scores to get in, no bus transportation since it was for the whole county. Way stricter dress code than all the other schools in the district. And they were able to have a ton of extra rules because it was a choice school. Now, I was the first graduating class. I was there the first year it opened. At that time, it was 5th to 9th grade, and I started as a freshman. The second year, they had completed the elementary wing, so it was K-10. They added grades until my senior year when it was finally K-12. As the school grew, it continued to add more policies. My sophomore year, the school's second year of being open, they began a new policy where all students 7th grade and above had to be on a sports team everywhere. I thought this was really, really stupid. I hated it. I'm not an athlete. I was in other clubs and I was getting increasingly involved with my church. Being the mature 16-year-old I was, my initial plan was to join a team and have a bad attitude. Like an awful, evangelistically bad attitude so that no one would have any fun. And this would prove to the school how awful this rule was. Instead, for all the lazy kids like me, they started a school walking team. It wasn't power walking, just regular walking. We just had to walk around the neighborhood for about 45 minutes 3 times a week after school. I was fine with this. I didn't mind walking around. Of course, there was an adult coach, but since the whole thing was ridiculous anyways, my friend and I declared ourselves co-captains. This mostly consisted in telling the middle schoolers to walk faster. No one else considered us co-captains, but we did. And that's all that mattered to us, since it was all a joke anyways. I did that my sophomore and junior years, but fast forward to my senior year, I was 18, working part-time about 15 to 20 hours a week. I was super involved in my church, and my family was a chaotic mess of dysfunction that traumatized me in numerous ways. They finally enforced a state law that everyone on a sports team has to have an annual physical on file. I didn't really bother with this since it wasn't a real sport anyways. Eventually, they came to me and said that it was so late in the season that even if I got a physical, I would need to pick a different sport in the winter or spring. Walking team was a fall sport. I was essentially just, screw this. I had enough other things in my life to deal with, and I didn't want to put up with this crap anymore. I decided to do exactly what they say and get the physical, so I decided I would do my best to fail it. So eventually I went and saw the doctor. It's important to note that I didn't have a primary care doctor at the time. That's why I didn't get a physical before then. So I just went to some little walk-in clinic and tell them I need a sports physical. I didn't tell them what the sport was. Now, as I was filling out the patient history form, I answered truthfully. I did not lie. But I didn't provide any context. So I checked yes to a history of asthma, mostly from when I was a kid, severe seasonal allergies, and a history of seizures. See, when I was 13, I had a couple dozen seizures in a day or two. No one knew what was going on, and eventually I was diagnosed with epilepsy specifically, having absent seizures. Since then, I had been taking anticonvulsants every day. As far as I'm aware, even 20 years after that initial episode, I'm not sure I've had a full-blown seizure since then. It's literally the mildest case of epilepsy I've ever heard of. The doctor does a quick physical exam, mostly vitals and similar things. As she looks at my patient history form, she asks about the seizures. I explain that I was diagnosed with epilepsy, I take anticonvulsants, and I have a neurologist I see about once or twice a year. She says, well, I can't pass you until I hear from your neurologist. I basically hopped out of the chair and said, thank you, and walked out. I never did contact the neurologist. Instead, I just gave the paperwork to the school. That's how I, a relatively healthy 18-year-old, got medically disqualified from the school walking team. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, number 56. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Regarding story... I record these out of order sometimes. Which one was it? Number 3, there we go. Story number 3. Why do you record them out of order, Hellfreezer? I have reasons. Very boring YouTube-related reasons, but I have reasons. Yeah, but regarding the story there with the regional manager and the person with the hair dye, I think those of us who've working for, certainly those of us who've worked in retail for any length of time, we've all encountered those people. They get the teeniest, tiniest, as significant as a gnat's fart of power, and they think they rule the world. I mean, really, you should feel sorry for them because their lives are so miserable. I mean, it's hard to feel sorry for them, but ideally we should, because their lives are so freaking miserable that is all they have, and that's why they act that way, because they've got nothing else. I mean, I once had a regional manager who was a little bit of a prick, but he also impersonated George Michael on his days off, so he wasn't that bad. But I then had the supervisor that I worked with who was so empty and miserable inside that the only fun she got was by making other people miserable. And sad to say, she did. Everybody hated her. And as I said, we should feel sorry for them, but it's hard because they're making us miserable. Okay, with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.